Hey gorgeous, today we're going to look at several potential traps that can rip apart a business and a marriage when a husband and a wife decide to work together. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Powerhouse. Vanessa Long here, coach, trainer, and creator of Discovering Your Passionate Purpose, the Seasons of Success seminars, and the Party Goal-Getting System. For regular motivation and strategies, make sure you click subscribe and ring that bell. Okay, today we are talking about what happens when a husband and a wife decide to be partners in marriage as well as in business. What are some of the potential traps that they can fall into, and how can you avoid them, and how can you navigate them so that you can really succeed in your business and in your marriage? And I want to start with the caveat, most couples can't do it. Why? Well, it's because the business will exacerbate any issues that you have happening in your marriage. And most marriages, sadly, are not strong enough to also hold the business stress. So we've got all the stress from the marriage, and then we add on all the stress from the business. And if you run a business, you know that it's stressful. And if you're in a marriage, you know that that can be stressful. And when you add them together, it can blow both of them up. And that is a tragedy. I believe so passionately in marriage, and that you're together for a reason, and that you're here for a reason, and you're here to change the world. Which means if you can make it work, if you can make your marriage be truly extraordinary, and if you can work together, you have the potential to make a massive impact on the world and build that better world that we all want. To begin to make this work, you have to have a commitment to two things. One, you have to have a commitment to open communication. You have to be willing to talk to each other and able to talk to each other. You have to be able to say, I don't like this, or this isn't working for me, or wow, that hurt when that happened. You also have to make a huge commitment to working through your stuff, because I guarantee there's going to be stuff. So before you decide to open up a business or buy a business with your spouse, make sure that you make that commitment to each other. We will have open communication, we will have regular times to talk about it, and we're both committed to working through the stuff that will come up and not repress it. Repression is death. You need to process what is happening. All right, so the first trap that couples fall into when they're working together is unclear roles and expectations. In any business, there are certain roles. Someone who does the bookkeeping, someone who does the advertising, someone who does the interviewing, someone who hires employees, someone who deals with customers, someone who handles the customer service phone calls. In a big business, there are people who do each of those roles. In a small business, a micro business, which is what you will probably have when you start, it might just be the two of you, and you'll be doing all the things. And that's a big mistake, because then no one is responsible for anything, and it gets muddled and it gets messy. What's really important in the beginning, before you start your business, is to get clear on who's responsible for what. It doesn't mean that you don't both do things and you don't both chip in. And it does mean you need to be clear that this person is responsible for this area and this person is responsible for this area. And one of the best ways to do that is to figure out what you're good at. Who has the head for numbers? Who pays the bills on time? You can actually use what you know about each other from your marriage to figure out who should be responsible for what in the business. For instance, my husband is the outgoing party guy, and I am much more reserved and serious. So when it comes to customer service phone calls, he handles those. He is the one who knows how to do it. He can stay calm, he can stay collected, and he genuinely wants to know what's happening with people, where are they headed, what problems do they have, and how can he fix them. I can do customer service phone calls, but he loves them. He's so much better at them. So that's his area. The other part of this is to get your unconscious expectations conscious. This is one of the most important things you can do in your marriage and in your business, is to make all the things you expect to happen, the shoulds that you're carrying that you've brought into your marriage, to get them out on the table, to get them out in the open, to get them up into your head, so you actually know that you're expecting them to do that. In a marriage, this can be as simple as, my father always mowed the lawn, so I expect that the man will mow the lawn. But your husband might be coming in thinking, my parents shared all the yard work and my mom loved mowing the lawn, so I expect that we'll both be mowing the lawn. And so what happens is, if you don't make those conscious and you don't talk them through, you're going to end up butting heads and seething with resentment because the lawn's not getting mowed because you're both expecting that the other person will do it. Same thing in your business. What are you expecting will happen? Are you expecting that your spouse will handle the money? Are you expecting that your spouse will handle the people? You have to get super clear about that, get it written down, and yes, write it down. All the roles, all the responsibilities, all the expectations. Who is going to handle what? The second area, and this is a deal breaker, if you cannot agree on this, you should not be in business together, is your vision. What do you envision this company looking like? What do you expect it to grow like? Do you want it to grow slow? Do you want it to grow fast? Do you want it to take up 80 hours a week, 20 hours a week? Do you want to have no employees, 100 employees? What is your vision for this company? And does it match up with your partner's vision? You have to do a vision alignment where you both figure out what you want and then work with each other to see that they're aligned. And if you want, this is actually a great place to reach out for coaching, and we can do a vision alignment where we work through all the differences and the similarities, and we get a corporate vision for your business that motivates and excites both of you. This vision has to be congruent in the short term and in the long term, and you need to revisit it on a regular basis. That is one of the key things to running a business with anybody, let alone your spouse. You have to have regular meetings to talk strategy, to work on the business, to process what's happening in the business so that it strengthens your marriage instead of ripping it apart. So getting that aligned vision of what we're building, why we're building it, what excites us about it, where do we see it going in the short and long term is a deal breaker. You must have that. And most people don't. They both think, they assume that their partner is thinking exactly the same thing they do because, any reasonable person would think that, right? Wrong. That is not the way that works. And being married, you know that what you think totally makes sense and is totally reasonable can come as a complete surprise to your spouse. It's one of the great things about being married. We're just constantly surprised by how different that person we chose is from us. And we think, how is that even possible? Well, it is. There are opposite. There are other who helps to reveal more of us to ourselves. But that's a completely different video. So just know, first two things when you're building a business with your partner that you can fall into. Number one, not having clear roles and expectations. And number two, not having a congruent, aligned vision that you both share and rework and revisit on a regular basis. Number three are boundaries. Oh, this one is so important. You have to have agreed upon boundaries about a lot of things, and you have to have these in your marriage and you have to have them in your business. So it makes sense that when you have a business together and you're married, you need even more boundaries. One of the most common boundaries that people don't agree on that you must, if you want your marriage to be healthy and happy, is when you're allowed to talk shop and when you do not talk shop. For instance, you might be the one who likes to wake up at 5 a.m. filled with ideas because your unconscious mind has been working on it all night and you're just exploding with possibility and potential and oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell you everything that I've got inside of me. That's what we call a morning person. And your spouse just likes to wake up very slowly, very quietly, and they don't want to think or talk before they've had their first coffee. And yes, those two types of people do tend to marry each other. And I'm totally not speaking from experience here at all. I am totally the person who wakes up at 5 a.m. and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got all these ideas. And my husband he just shakes his head, rolls over and goes back to sleep because he doesn't want to talk about it yet. And that's okay. You have to have proper boundaries and you have to respect them. When are you allowed to talk shop? When aren't you? when do you work? When don't you work? Or do you work weekends? Do you work evenings? If you've got kids at home, how do they fit into this? Are they going to work with you in the business? That's a great idea, by the way. And do you want to make sure that you can hit all of the PTA meetings and the soccer games and the recitals? All of these things fit into what kind of a business you're going to build and where your business boundaries are. Okay, so let's get really real. Number 4 is a heartbreaker, and it is the distinction between the tech and the management, or the tech and the entrepreneur. And I'm referring to Michael Gerber's book, E-Myth Revisited. If you're going to be in business, you have to read this book. It is amazing. Talks about systems, boundaries, and creating the kind of business that you want to be in. Here's the dilemma that I often find my clients in when I go to work with a business that's owned by a husband and a wife. One of them is the tech. They're the talent, and they tend to think that they're the star of the business. And this creates a huge power imbalance between the spouses because one of them does the work and the other one is recruited to do the unimportant admin stuff. So the technician is the one who does the work. It could be the accountant, the plumber, the mechanic, the bookkeeper, the coach, the hairdresser, the whatever. They are the one who does the service. They are the one who does the job. And obviously I'm talking about service businesses here. Michael Gerber calls this an entrepreneurial seizure, where they are happily working away and then one day they're like, oh, I want to own my own business and I want to do this and not have to answer to the man, and I want to run my own shop and make my own money. And so they go out and they start their own business. The dilemma of the technician is that they think that all they have to do is be good at what they do. The accounting, the bookkeeping, the plumbing, the car repair, the coaching, the hairstyling. And they'll somehow have a really successful business. But that isn't true. A business is the container that holds the space for the technician to do their job. And so what happens is after the technician has been trying to build the business for a while, often they will recruit their spouse and say, hey, can you come on board and handle this other stuff? This, stuff that's just getting in the way of me doing my thing, and I'll keep doing my thing and you handle everything else. And the spouse who is like, well, we need money coming in, and so they join in, they get on board, and they think that it's going to be a partnership. And that makes sense because usually there is a partnership agreement that they have signed and it's a 50-50 or 51-49. They think that it's going to be an equal partnership, but the technician usually wants to hold all the power. Even though they've delegated the business to their spouse, they still want to be in charge. So they override, they undermine, they get in the way of the other spouse doing the business. Or they totally abdicate and they say, I'm only going to do my thing, you have to do everything else. And here's the problem. This unequal power dynamic where the technician is in charge will totally doom the business, and it will rip apart the marriage. Because what I've seen is that the other spouse, the one who's left to be the manager and the entrepreneur, they quickly realize that there is a lot to running a business that is not just doing the thing. And this is what I mean by our business is the container that provides the opportunity for a technician to do their work. A business, a successful business, is the systems, the procedures, the roles, the responsibilities, the employees, the people, the marketing, the selling, the advertising. It's everything, including the technician role. And the truth is, talented techs are a dime a dozen. Yes, they can feel really rare, and yes, you need to treasure them and treat them very well. And the business is what allows the technician to actually do their job. If the business isn't strong, the technician has no work to do. If the business isn't marketing and advertising and selling, the technician has nothing to do. If the technician leaves, a new technician can be found. If you're running a real business and your bookkeeper leaves, you can get a new one. That's the way a business works. A business can be franchised, it can be duplicated, you can open a chain of stores. So the business and the person doing the business is actually the one doing the business. But they're usually in a position of less power because of this unequal power dynamic where the tech wants to be the superstar. A big part of the work that I do with my clients is helping the manager entrepreneur partner realize that they've been dominated and kind of terrorized by their technician spouse, that they've been undermined, overridden, that they've been negated by their technician spouse. And this can rip apart a marriage, and it needs to be addressed. So business is about creating the structures and the consistency to hold the technician's work. And that is very important, and I encourage you to treat it as very important and to work to equalize the power dynamics in your relationship. Because if they're out of balance in your business, they're probably out of balance in other parts of your marriage as well. Number 5 is to get really real about the values and beliefs and addictions that are present in the marriage and in the business. A poverty mindset, a scarcity mindset, an unwillingness to charge is just as much of an addiction as pornography, gambling, drugs, or alcohol. And it will destroy your business and your marriage. If you're out there hustling and working and building and you can't figure out why when it gets to your spouse it all falls apart, there is probably a values and beliefs disconnect at work. And you need to uncover it and you need to get really real about it. If you're trying to build an entire business around someone who really doesn't want to succeed, around someone who is afraid of success, or around someone who doesn't like money, you're going to experience constant frustration, and it honestly might be better for you to go and start a different business by yourself instead of getting bitter and resentful toward your spouse because they keep ruining the business. They're doing the best they can. If they need therapy, if they need coaching, if they have work that they need to do, and they probably do, and so do you, then get the help, resource, reach out, work with someone who can help you see and help you work through it. But if they refuse to change and they refuse to work through it, in other words, they haven't lived up to those commitments we talked about at the beginning about being willing to work through stuff, at some point to preserve your marriage, you'll probably need to step out of that business and go start your own. If you realize that you love business and you want to build something really cool and you're into making it happen, go make it happen. You do not need your spouse to do that. There are lots of spouses who do not work together and they have great marriages. You can totally do this. And then number 6 is to get really real about this power dynamic and what it's like to work with your spouse. And one of the big questions that I get my clients to ask when we're working together is, if your spouse were an employee, would you fire them? Would you keep that person who is constantly causing trouble in your business, who won't respect you, who won't listen to you, who has a negative attitude, who's treating the employees badly, who's treating your customers badly, who doesn't want to get into the actual creation of a business? Would you keep someone like that if they were an employee? And the answer is usually, yeah, I'd fire them. I wouldn't keep them. There's no way I would tolerate this from an employee. And that's a really empowering realization. And the truth is your spouse would probably fire you too. So this isn't all about them. It's about you realizing where you really are. Once you've come to that realization, you're probably not going to fire your spouse. Probably. But what you can do is start to create systems and workarounds and have those big open conversations with them about what's working and what's not and what needs to shift and why it matters to you. And again, this is a great thing to work through with a coach who can help you both hold the space for honesty and communication and keep you moving where you want to move. And if it turns out that there are irreconcilable differences between you and your spouse and the kind of business you want to build and how you want to show up in that business and whether you actually even want a business and whether you actually even want money, you may need to do what I said in number 5 and go start your own business, or you may need to retire your spouse so that you can actually build the business that you're dreaming about. And that's okay. You don't need to work with your spouse to have a great marriage. If you can make it work though, you can create something truly extraordinary. And this is all about acting like an owner, a real entrepreneur, someone who's willing to make the tough decisions, who sees the big picture and is ready to step in and lean in to creating a big impact in the world and something truly extraordinary. I totally believe in you and that you can do this. You just need to ask the right questions and get the right resources. So, thoughts, questions, put them in the comments. What's your nugget of gold today? What did you learn, realize, or remember that you can use to make your life better today? What trap that I described resonates with you most? Where do you see yourself falling into one of these traps? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, click the thumbs up and share it out with your powerhouse peers so that they can get the inspiration as well. And if you're new here, make sure you click subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified when we put up new content, which is every week. And for those of you Mojo Masters who know to hang around until the end of the video, here is your bonus power tip. You cannot pay too much attention to the power dynamics. Usually, we're not even aware that there is such a thing as power dynamics, even though they're ripping us apart. When we get that bitterness, that seething anger, that repression, when we're constantly biting our tongue, that's usually because there is some sort of power dynamic inequality. And we need to address them if we want our business and our marriage to be healthy. It's really important that you do your own work here instead of just looking at your spouse and blaming everything on them. And that's really common, is to say, oh, it's because they're doing this and they're doing that and they're doing all these things. Make sure that you're not giving them the power to make you miserable. This is something we really tend to do in our marriages. We get married and we make all those vows and we make all those promises and we say, I'm going to do my best to make you happy forever. And our husbands want to make us happy. That is their biggest goal. And when they realize that it doesn't work and they can't figure out how to make us happy, because you can't make another person happy, but we want them to. We want them to make us happy, and they realize they can't do it, and we realize they can't do it. It starts to burn, and it starts to rip us open. You have to learn how to find your own satisfaction. You have to learn what success looks like for you. And you have to make sure that you're not shifting all the power to your spouse and then blaming them that things aren't going right. You have to take back that power and say, I am responsible here. I am powerful. I am building a business. I am building a marriage. I am building a life. And that may mean that you need to dissolve the business partnership and go work on your own and build your own thing in order to preserve the marriage. Always, 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 the key here is that open communication and willingness to work through stuff. And no one is perfect at this, and it's not going to go as easily or as quickly as you want it to. And if you can make this work, like I said at the beginning, you can create a truly extraordinary marriage and a truly extraordinary business where the two of you come together and work together to make a massive impact on the world and build that better world that you dream of. And I want that for you. So if you need support, if you need resourcing, please reach out and let me know. All right, that's it for your video today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.